Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio, brother that I had a year and a half ago. We've had an opportunity to be a men many events together. Really good brother, like husband, he's father, host podcast, speaker, and most importantly, he's a man of God. And this brother has taken time out of his busy schedule to jump on with us this evening to share a little bit about his journey in the hopes of inspiring and pouring into the lives of others, sharing what it means to go through the challenges and the adversities and how to process through those things in a healthy and proper perspective. So it is my privilege and honor to present to you this brother, my dear friend, Mr. Tim Nicholas. Brother Tim, thank you for being on the show with me today.
Hey, how you doing, Joseph? Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the intro. Just thank you for welcoming me, man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, my brother. So before we jump off into our segments for this evening, I do want to, of course, give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do. Just kind of give the audience a little bit of taste of who is Tim Nicholas.
Who is Tim Nicholas? So let's see. I'm a 37-year-old Black African-American man, proud to be Black. I am. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, so I'm an East Coast guy all the way. But I was raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and so my mom's side of the family is from Philly. My dad's side from Baltimore, so we decided to move when I was 2. And so just a little bit about myself overall. I'm a husband. I'm a husband to my wife, Allie. We've been married for a year now. And we also are a blended family of 6 beautiful children. And so my life revolves around their life, their studies, their, different interests and hobbies and things like that. And then being a husband, my time is really lovingly consumed with them. And so that's a little bit about myself.
Well, that's awesome, man. And again, I know you're just over that stage of newly married, So I mean, shout out to you, beautiful wife, and I love to just see your post as you put out there on social media. You can just tell the energy that's there amongst you, and then to have a blended family, as you just stated, which was something I didn't know about you. That's a big deal for you all to kind of come in there and just doing your thing. I even saw just real quick, I saw the snippet around, I think it was right around the holidays. You got the kids, the vending machines, trying to teach them about financial awareness and things of that nature. I thought that was super cool. So, you're doing your thing, brother. And I really love that. That's very admirable to see that, not only just in married couples in general, but of course, to be biased, to see our Black married couples, young Black married couples, getting off to a right start, set the tone for the family and success in the future of that family, whether we're talking about generational wealth building, whether we're talking about your faith perspective of your life, and, having God at the head, and, all of those things matter, man. And of course, obviously, as I stated at the top of the show, you and I have connected at Men Empowerment event. So I see you in that mode, whether it be in a facilitating capacity or just pouring into other brothers, just in general, just trying to share and pour into and encourage and uplift, man. So those are great things that you're doing. So I appreciate that intro, man. So
thank you.
Absolutely. So when we talk about our journeys in life, I'm a firm believer that in order for you really to get the full of what one's journey, what one's story is about, it's really important that you delve back into where it all begins, that starting at the foundational basis. And so that's what we're going to do at this time with you. So if you would, I want you to kind of think back. I know you said you're born on the East Coast, kind of take us back, man, and just kind of walk through it with us. What was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there was any specific challenges that come to mind in growing up. You can share those as well. Just kind of give us that starting point of your journey.
Well, I think it's a great question, and excuse me, and it's a great segue into just kind of learning about someone, just an overall elevator pitch type of thing, and then moving into like kind of diving into our past and who we are, because it defines your future actions. So just about myself, though, being raised on the East Coast, I was grew up in Baltimore, and I always felt disconnected living in Baltimore because here it is. I have a family that I'm connected to in Philadelphia where I feel love. I feel, hey, I'm getting bullied by my cousins. You're supposed to get bullied by your cousins. It toughens you up, right? And so
Right.
I'm getting the life lessons in Philly, but then my family in Baltimore I would rarely see, and so it always felt like I didn't belong in Baltimore, Maryland. While I got a lot of experiences and life lessons there, I always connect myself to Philly because that's where the love was poured into me. That's where the knowledge was poured into me. It was my family who cared about me there. And so from that angle, I've always felt like I've been out of place everywhere that I've been. I know for me personally, I have a very unique personality. I'm not for everybody, all those types of things. And I developed that as a child where I would see my mother just being this overly friendly type of person to people. And to me, it already shaped the type of person that I was going to be too, just based off of the example that I was seeing her. So, grew up in a house with my mom, my dad, and my brother. So it was four of us. Um, a loving home. I tell everybody that I lived in a loving home in Randallstown, Maryland. But however, with my home being loving, it was also dysfunctional. As unfortunately, most Black homes come from some level of dysfunction, unfortunately, or you get to be exposed to it at a certain age. And so for me, it was dysfunctional, just not understanding why. It was always trauma with my parents because my parents would split up, seemed like every 2 or 3 years. And then they would get back together. And then I would see my mother dating somebody else and getting into a serious relationship with a man, only to turn around and still see, your pops coming back in the house. And so it was just that confusing dysfunction where I'm still trying to like learn myself and who I am and my identity. I'm struggling to even figure out how to fit in as a child. But then I'm having certain things around me that's affecting me. I can't talk about it. So in a way, I'm lashing out with behavioral issues that ADHD medication you got to be on when you're in second and third grade, and you got to turn into a zombie just to stay focused or not to over, get yourself in trouble or behave incorrectly and things like that. So I struggled with a lot of identity things as a kid, just not always feeling in place, if that makes sense. So that's kind of about myself that I can kind of start with.
Okay. Well, of course, first off, I want to, thank you for your transparency and sharing, and I understand as you talk about that identity, connection, just like I said, with the two separate households, the inconsistency in your parents in terms of being together and then not being together and then being together and not being together, and then producing third parties coming in between those times. And, this is my real dad. This is the guy that's just seeing my mom right now. How do I adjust here and there? And then, like you said, when you have that, whether we want to call it dysfunction, or I would just say, I don't even want to go maybe as harsh as saying just the intimacy, if you will, or in the stability. Sometimes that can, like you said, for a kid, that can just make confusing. And then that just transitions into other areas of your life, like in school and just your day-to-day function. And unfortunately, as you may mention, you get into those situations where it creates behavior. And then, of course, the first thing that, whether it's the school systems or medical professionals, particularly in the Black community, a lot of times it's just automatically assumed something's wrong with you. Here
Right.
comes the medications, and here comes the discipline, the disciplinary actions or what happens to that. Not understanding that really you just needed maybe somebody to talk to, to kind of sort it out. But just like it was with myself growing up, I'm sure even in your time growing up, it's only been in recent years that we've embraced the idea of things like counseling and things like that. That's always been a taboo conversation for us in our community. So, what the treatment, the help that you probably needed to kind of sort everything out, that would have never even come into play. So, again, being a kid coming up and trying to have to figure all that, like you said, can be really challenging. So, so I appreciate, again, you sharing that, because I know that there are going to be some people who have an opportunity to tune into this episode and they're going to totally identify with that. having come from similar backgrounds and everything. So again,
Absolutely.
appreciate you sharing that. So yeah,
Yes,
so I
sir.
see you got that East Coast connect. Just a
Yes.
quick side note, my in-laws live out east. They live in Maryland.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
What
they're
part of
they're
Maryland?
living in they live in Upper Marlboro,
Upper Marlboro.
Maryland.
I got family in up. I have family in Upper Marlboro. They've been there. They got a nice big house out there. You know, they got land and stuff in Upper Marlboro. So nice location. So they're
Okay.
in a really good spot.
Also, yeah, we were just down there. In fact, for Thanksgiving, we were in Upper Marlboro. And
Nice.
then of course, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Philly connection for two reasons. One, of course, one of my favorite movies of all time, of course, is Rocky. I could probably recite almost all of the words in every, no matter
There
what
you
the
go.
episode is. I've seen it.
I'm
And
same
then
here. One through now nine, it seems, with three. So man, but
yeah.
Rocky, those movies you could watch from 1 through 5, and still in number 2, you still rooting for Rocky to get up right before
Hmm.
3 gets up. You, ooh,
Even though
man,
what's getting ready to happen, it's like you kind of, like you said, you root for it. And then I think what's, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but one of the things that's, that I find, valuable in movies like that, especially as I've gotten older and because I've watched it, I now watch movies like that from a different perspective. So now I'm drawing out like what is the deeper meanings and the lessons and things like that. And I can probably pull out a couple from each one of them that I can actually apply to day to day life. So that's what makes such a thing so special as well. And it's funny that you and I are talking this evening because my wife actually has to go out of town on business. This is going to be going to Philadelphia
oh really?
tomorrow. So it's so just odd that we just happen to
The
by
whole
chance be
Philly
talking about
connect.
this. So we got a whole East Coast Philly connect going on right now. So, but that's
That's
cool, man.
I'm loving it.
Yes, right. 'Cause I even told her, I said, before you come back, I need you to bring me back a hoagie. I ain't had a hoagie in a long time. I need you to find some spot to bring me back something. So,
Now,
and I already
of
put my
course, you
my
do
pit.
want that Philly connect, but look, there are spots in Dallas that actually have actual Philly cheesesteaks, and it tastes just like the real thing. So, if you're ever interested, I'll give you that information, and you
Okay,
could
I'm gonna
try
have
it.
to hit you up on
Guaranteed.
that.
Man, I had one on Friday. It was amazing because they still get the bread and everything shipped from
Hmm.
Jersey. They get everything
Okay.
shipped from Jersey, the meat, the bread, the cheese. They ship it at all their locations. They have like 11 locations in the Metroplex, and they ship it. Man, it's a good business. So I promise you, it
Well,
is.
yeah, I'll definitely have to check with you when we get offline on that. Because like, yeah, I was hitting up on that because, of course, growing up in Chicago, hoagies was a big thing, in Chicago, and that was a staple sandwich that I got on the regular. I tell people all the time, a hoagie is not the same as a sub. It's totally different. The
Oh,
makeup of it, the dressing of it, the whole is different. If you know, you know, you know. So it's just one of those things. So.
they don't
But
know.
it's
You
good.
just got to
They
educate
don't
them.
know. They don't know. We got to, like you said, we got to educate them. So, excuse me, my listeners. I know we got a little off subject, got a little hungry, got to talking about the food, but but when you like Philly, you places like Chicago, those are the things that you really miss about those places. Like come to mind, like near the top of the list. It's like anybody ask me, what do you miss about Chicago? Number one on the list, as I said, the food choices. It was just a
Food.
different vibe, a different flavor. And and we can even make that connection to what we've been talking. I mean, just when you talk about how food, the connection of food to the fellowship and how it brings people together and communities together, regardless of what your setup is in your household or things of that nature. It's amazing how food can bring people together, in a common and just share and love on one another and just enjoy the lives of one another. And you just don't see a lot of that these days, especially with our kids coming up. They don't necessarily experience it the same way that we had an opportunity to get some of that extended family. You talked about that earlier about the cousins, whether they blood cousins or play cousins, that you just kind of, went through your trials with, and the fun times, the fights that lasted 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes later, you boys again. You back doing what you're doing. So
Right.
it's just the way it was, back then. So my
Yeah.
brother, with that said, as you move, of course, into adulthood, and you to embrace other experiences and challenges in life. You live long enough. There are going to come points in time where certain storms will come your way, certain moments of adversity will come your way that just hit a little different. You might be really good at navigating your way through challenging times, but every now and then we get hit with something that, wait a minute, this is a little bit heavier than the norm. This is something that I'm not sure how I'm going to work my way out of this. This is not something I can throw some money at to make it go away, or make a phone call and make it go away, or get a favor in and make it go away. I'm totally helpless. I don't know what to do. So with that said, tell us about a time when you found yourself in a situation like that, where you didn't see a way out. You didn't know how you were going to work your way through that moment of challenge, that moment of adversity. You're here today, so we can trust and believe that you've either made your way through it or you're progressing along in that path. If you would kind of walk us through a time when you experienced such a thing, what was that certain circumstances like for you? And what was that turning point ultimately where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that storm?
Probably the most obvious for me was getting divorced in 2020. I was not a good husband or a good person at the time. And did and said things that don't reflect the character of who I am today. And so I was a habitual cheater, Joseph. And while I'm not proud of owning that as a part of my story, it's nothing I'm proud of, but it is a part of my story because it's a part of my healing as well. What I had to go through during that divorce was not only heartbreaking for me or for the other person, but I wasn't really dealing with it in the most healthy way. If I wasn't willing to take full accountability and responsibility for the sin that I committed, it's easy to point the finger at the other person. We're all guilty of it because we do not want to see the log that's in our own eye. We want to see the speck that's in someone else's and magnify it as a log before we can even get to the point of admitting the wrong we've done. And so I would always say, I have a good heart. I have good intentions for people, all those things. So I'm like, I'm not the problem. I did what I did because of you, and I wasn't taking full responsibility. And so it was a major challenge because it affected everyone. It affected my family. It affected relationships within my family. It was just an avalanche of things that I wasn't really willing to face at the time. Knowing that my decisions also affected not just my ex-wife, but it affected my children. Losing that family structure and having that broken, when you look back at the things that you do, you look at the mistakes that you make and that the people that you love the most, you have to explain why that's broken for them. And so going through that entire challenge, it was an obstacle but I felt like honestly, Joseph, if I can be totally honest, I think the major turning point was a failed relationship, but during that failed relationship, I started to see myself in the mirror. And so one thing I kept looking back at in the mirror was my father. And, I told you earlier in the segment where they just, would separate, get back together, separate, get back together. And a lot of it was just based off of my dad being a bad dude. And so when I looked in the mirror for the first time in the midst of that mess, I looked in the mirror and saw my father. And I said, it scared me on how much I looked like him. And then I started to feel like if I don't start being vulnerable to God, I'm probably going to end up like my father, but worse. And that's a scary feeling when you don't look up to your father, when you have to try to find positive things to say or think, but still dealing with some of the traumatic things because we're all a work in progress. And so I can admit that's something I'm continuing to work through, but I'm way farther along than where I was maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where I could cringe at his name or the fact that I'm a junior and he's a senior. I would have cringed at all those things, but then you still try to find out and say, well, you got the beautiful side of that person too. So don't fully discount, he's a charmer and you can be that way too, and things like that. You start to own those things, which means that, yeah, he's healing in the right direction. But that was the turning point for me, saying I needed to be more vulnerable with God because I didn't want to end up being a failure in life.
Wow. Well, let me first off, again, say, appreciate your transparency and sharing that. There are, I've had many people, men and women, have come on the podcast and have shared stories of having to go through divorce. But it's not often, again, whether it's male or female, it's not often that, a person will come on and speak to the fact of the reason or a part of the reason for the divorce was due to, infidelity of some sorts. And so I appreciate you sharing that and owning that, because one, it makes you human. Hey, I made a mistake. We're not here to condone it or justify it, but you acknowledge it. Hey, this was a shortcoming that I had and it led to the ending of my marriage. But what I think I liked, most about what you said in that, you talked about how that divorce in part and all that led up to it, it ultimately led you to embrace an understanding about your need to be vulnerable before God, to basically to God and rely upon him. Because I think that had you perhaps, been more vulnerable, had you perhaps leaned more into God, let's just say while you were in that first marriage and going through whatever it was that you were going through, maybe it would have allowed you to, maybe make a different decision than the ones you make. Because like you said, whether you're in a marriage or even just in a regular relationship, I mean, I think I can even admit, been guilty of that. It's like you can be with somebody, they can make you mad, get on your nerves or whatever. And then you say, well, because you did that, that justifies me to do that to make me feel better. We did it, but that doesn't necessarily make it the right decision. So,
Right.
But when we have God incorporated in that relationship dynamic, and especially in a marriage dynamic, he's able to remind us that, hey, you're going to go through your stuff. I mean, that's what comes with. Expect to go through some stuff. Why? Because both you as the husband and she as the wife, you're both imperfect people who got baggage, who got junk and mess that go along with it. And so you're going to bump heads, you're going to clash from time to time. But if I'm involved in the process, what I'm able to do is give you the strength and those storms for you to have a clear mind and a clear focus to work through your challenges that you're going through, instead of taking it upon yourself to resolve the problem. Because oftentimes when we just do it on our own strength and on our own merit and not seeking that counsel and that guidance from him, we're likely to make fleshly decisions, whether it be, you done made me mad, so I'm going to go out to the club tonight and whatever happens, or whether it's something else, whether I, decided I'm just going to drink this anger away, or I'm going to smoke this anger away, or do some other behavior that's just not going to be, whether it be healthy to me or whether it not be healthy to my significant other. So, again, that's what makes it so powerful in what you're sharing here. Again, just saying we're not perfect, but I like the fact that you drew from that experience, because that's the important thing about our storms. Allowed you to go through what you went through, not because he was trying to hurt your now ex-spouse, not because he was trying to hurt your children, but he had to let you go through it to bring you closer to him. He had to let you experience a low moment in life, not to the point where it broke you to where you could not return. We can bounce back from it, but enough to where you said, okay, I get it. Let's talk.
I'm done.
I don't know what to do. you
Like,
know,
done.
um,
Please take
yeah,
Jesus, take the wheel, literally.
take the wheel, and look what that's done for you. You had, I mean, I don't know if you ever thought that you would remarry again or not, but look, you've since moved forward from that, remarried. You have a blended family. You have an opportunity to have a second chance at this. I don't think that that was a mistake. So God is a forgiving God. He loves us. He wants to give you those second and third and 1,000th chances. But most importantly, he wants that relationship with. He wants you to know that no, I don't care how hard it gets, no matter what you're going through. If you just lean in me, talk to me about it, I'll help you figure that thing out. you
Yeah.
know, just don't
Yes.
try to go solo like we tend to do. Again, been guilty of it many times, trying to do solo acts on my own. And, I'm going to leave God out at got it. And he's like, okay, I'll be here when you get done bumping that head. And when I get done bumping that head, like, okay, all right, well, maybe we should have talked. Let's talk about it. Can you help me? You're like, okay,
Right.
about time you came back to me and had this conversation. So again, man, I appreciate that. And one last thing about you, talk to you about your father and how it started to make you feel like in that dark moment, like I'm gonna start being like him. You start thinking about the dark side of him. But again, your closeness to God helped you to remind you to say, hey, dad wasn't perfect either, but there are some positive traits, in your father. Be thankful that you got that, whether it's the charisma, whether it's the charm, whether it's the intelligence or whatever. Was he a perfect man? No. Was mom a perfect woman? No. Nobody was perfect, and neither are you. But don't be so quick to condemn him either. Like you said, don't him for everything. I got this way because of him.
Exactly.
So to me, I heard even a little element of forgiveness, for yourself as well as for dad. To just say, hey, Pop, I ain't blaming you all for this. Now I'm not gonna say I wasn't influenced a bit by some of what you showed me, that kind of got me astray. I mean, again, I could testify to that to my own dad, some of my most negative traits, in life. And when I think back to experiences, hey, kind of chip off the old block, so to speak,
Absolutely.
But then I think about the positive sides of it, and I'm like, hey, my dad did do this. He did have this, and I got some of that too. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that you passed that on to me. So, so that's
Well,
good sharing that, man. I'm sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
may, if I may add one thing to this, everything that you said has been spot on and accurate. And what I want to add to that is when it comes to children, children will love their parents unconditionally. It's just built in us, even when we hate them. Like, do you understand? Even when you hate them, or you find semblance of, or try not to hate them, or sorry, you, we always love them unconditionally. So we still will want well for them, even when you have to love them at our arm's length. That's real. That's the one thing I can encourage people. Like, you can always love them unconditionally, and you can feel that grief from time to time. And then you pick yourself back up and you keep it going. But
Exactly.
acknowledge that you feel it.
Mhm. And I feel that. And again, just to kind of clarify what you said, I don't even think that you per se hated dad, but you perhaps I may hate some of the things that you did or didn't do, because that's even how God is with us. He loves us unconditionally, but sin, but he doesn't hate us. He still loves us regardless of what we've done. He hates the sin, but he doesn't hate you. He doesn't hate me. He loves us. He wants us to come up out of those things that bind us, that keep a wedge between us, ourselves and him, that blocks that relationship. And so,
Right.
again, sometimes we have to go through our various storms of life, um, for the specifics of bringing back that connection if we've disconnected, or if the connection is a little weak or unsteady, perhaps to strengthen the connection a little bit more. Sometimes we have to go through what we go through in order to build upon that. And then there's other times that we go through what we go through Not because there's not a connection there. The connection could be strong as ever, but just as with the title of our show, for you to be in position to elevate that culture, for you to walk in your purpose and do what God has set for you to do, he sometimes has to let you go through some stuff just to build you up, to level you up so that you can be prepared for what he has coming ahead that you don't know about yet, but that individual, that assignment that awaits you that's down the road, I got to take you through this first so that when you come up out of it and that assignment's presented to you, you'll be ready for it. You'll be able to pour into, in a meaningful and an impactful way, because you've not only dealt with the situation, but you've been able to come up out of it. I mean, just, I've been divorced myself, and, and I've shared this on a number of occasions, and that goes with anybody, regardless of the reason why the divorce happens. It's not something that you would wish on anybody. I mean, when you talk about, the two becoming one, when you divorce, it literally, even though we know physically this doesn't happen, but emotionally, you're literally tearing apart from that individual that you've been married to, regardless of how it ended. And then, as you said, if there's kids involved, then that's just a whole new, element of layer to it, because oftentimes, depending upon their age and level of maturity, they don't understand. And they're just like, what's going on? What's happening? And it creates that confusion. And a kid doesn't want to feel like they got to pick sides and, or none of that kind of crazy stuff. So, so I'm just thankful that you were able to come through that situation, that you were able to learn from it. And that, again, that God gave you an opportunity to make a crack at it again. And from the looks of things, from what I've observed from my viewpoint, it looks like it's off to a great start. So we can only pray that it continues on that path and you grow and develop accordingly from that. But I can't say enough about appreciate you being transparent and sharing that. So somebody's gonna be blessed by what you share, just the ability and the ownership of it. The accountability of it matters so much that I'm not making no excuses. It was what it was, and it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you all the justifications as to why I did it.
No,
but it wasn't right. It wasn't right. It wasn't cool. It wasn't the way to go. I did it. I own it. But I'm not going to beat my body. You don't have to beat yourself up about it. There's no reason why you should be forever unforgiving to yourself for what happened. It happened. I fell short. I confess that to God, because I believe in God, because I believe Jesus died on the cross for remission of my sins. I have been forgiven, even for such. I have been forgiven. Now it's time for me to restore. Now it's time for me to rebuild, reset, and be a better version. And that's exactly the path that you've been on since that time. And perhaps even before that time, you're heading in that direction. That's what's ultimately important. So appreciate you for sharing that, man. So I said, as we're kind of talking about that healing journey, because that's really the step that we're in right now. I want to actually talk to you about that. When you do find yourself going through challenging times, again, whether it be something major like what we've just been talking about for the last few moments, or even if it's just something minor stuff that, minor annoyances or problems or challenges that we deal with, what do you like to do that works best for you when you're in those moments? What's your routine, your regimen that you like to go through that kind of helps you stay focused and locked in as you're working through whatever that moment of adversity or challenge moment is?
Yeah, man. My overcoming journey has been very enlightening, to say the least. I have learned about myself. I've learned how resilient I am. I didn't think I could bounce back and experience being the man that I always wanted to be. I just didn't think it was in me. I felt like the hole that I was in, the hole that we get into with infidelity, is a deep, dark hole. And I don't wish that hole on any brother or sister, for that matter, to go down. Because once you get into that, you feel such shame, and you stay in a cycle of shame every time, but it's a cycle hard to break. And so as a result, I knew that counseling was very important for me. I knew that I needed to really start to get healing from the things that hurt me, that I never discussed, that shaped the decisions that I have made years prior. Not making excuses for those things. Never will. but you start to understand how you think in a way. You start to think about those things and how you make those decisions. And I saw my reasons behind it, and they were all wrong, diluted reasons. And so I knew I needed to talk to someone and have someone hold me accountable. I knew that being vulnerable with myself would lead to spiritual transformation, a new level of self awareness that was there, knowing that I couldn't rest in my sin ever, but I didn't understand how powerful self awareness can be once you allow God to change your heart. And that's what I knew. I needed God to change my heart extensively, and I asked for a heart transplant, and He just started showing me different ways that I could be different and start to just operate in that way. In those counseling sessions that I would talk about how I felt, always felt different. I always felt like I didn't belong, and I started getting to the root of things in a deep way. And so, in order to heal, you have to go deep. You have to you have to pull the root up, and the root is whatever pain that you've been feeling, not necessarily the trigger or the person. I'm getting mad at the person, but not understanding that there's something that that person might say that triggers me in a way that really takes me back to something that I got to heal from. And I started to understand I needed to heal from abandonment, my father leaving and not being the man that the good example. Uh, and I'll tell you why I'm so big on elevating the culture. Let me also say this. I'm big on elevating our culture, Black culture, because most of the time, the only examples that we see as Black men that are good to their families are like from like the Cosby Show or different sitcoms, Family Matters, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We had TV dads that showed us the way, but we didn't have a lot of neighborhood cats showing us how to be good husbands and good fathers and how to keep everything at home and how to respect our women and our wives. I felt like for me, everything that I do and everything I put out there, it's an elevated culture that's lagging in how we love our women and how they deserve to be treated and things like that. And so that's why I go so hard for my wife and my children and loving them and the way that I have learned and how and this is how I also knew that I needed to overcome. I knew that I wanted to be a husband again, deep down. How many men you gonna hear say, I want to be a husband? No, I knew that my purpose lied in something deeper and stronger, but I knew that the only way to accomplish the goals that God had for me, I wasn't going to be able to walk this life alone. I knew that. Mm. And I knew that deep down early on. Because I knew that I needed to heal in order for God to bless me with the person that I was supposed to walk life with. And as I started to heal, then God started showing me who was good for me in order to walk through the next phase of my life, which was growing and rebuilding parts of my life. Now I can rebuild with someone who really I can live with and grow with and to do everything with together. And so that's how I really was motivated to heal as well. Just knowing that there was someone God had for me, but I can't trust you with them. God was telling me He couldn't trust me with them unless I finally surrendered to Him. Mm. And then I got the biggest blessing of my life. And it happened so swiftly, so fast. It was like, dang, I should have got this message a long time ago. This could have been so much easier, how it truly felt. And so my healing journey just really looked like counseling, taking accountability, understanding my part to play in it, and just start to heal from there and understanding I am human. And I started to forgive myself too, which was one of the hardest things to do because I could find myself pouring that energy into relationships. And I knew that wasn't a good thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And like you said, just the understanding the need to embrace the therapy to it. When you and I first met at that Candid Conversations event, many people, really nobody knew that at that event that I was, in a dark space at that time. And of course, who knew? And I felt like it wasn't an accident how I ended up being at that event, how it all played out, that I was able to make it there. And then, of course, pleasure, one of the brothers that I was able to meet at that time, of course, was Danny, who just happened to be a black male therapist who, prior to that, I had never partaken in therapy of any kind. I'd been one of the culture that was like, that's for crazy folks, but connection with him, and he ends up being my therapist, and we were able to have not only build a friendship, but he was able to have conversations with me that I needed to have to get through what I was dealing with at that particular point in time. So I wasn't, walking around like a nervous wreck and stressing and worrying about something because I didn't have a space or place to talk about it. And I wanted to tell quick too, because, one of the key things that you've been mentioning as you were talking about the healing journey is about the taking of accountability. But you and I, again, have been at these events, these men empowerment events, so I would love for you to speak to, and I don't know if you have this personally in your life right now, but I would love to speak to our men, the importance of having that accountability partner and having those conversations like we're having right now from man to man, because as you said, many of us didn't have that presence around us where if we were going through something, or if we wanted to learn about the right way to do it, whether it's to be a dad, to be a husband, to be a good brother, all, to one another. Who was our example? Who do we go through? Who do we talk to? So if you could just speak to that a little bit about the importance of just men in general, being okay with being not okay, being okay with not being okay, and being willing to open up to other brothers, and having those conversations, and building up one another. So if we are struggling and going through some stuff that we're going through, we got somebody who might be able to give us that insight that we need, that might shift us in making the right decision versus the wrong decisions and things of that nature. What do you have to say too about that?
I would have to say that brotherhood is so important. Number one. For me, I already grew up not trusting a lot of men in my family. Starting with the relationship with my father, how toxic that was, how manipulative that was, how abusive that was. It wasn't a relationship worth bragging about. Then you had uncles that you would see, they kind of in the street with other ladies. I didn't have a lot of good, positive examples around, right? And so in this season for me, when I was especially going through my divorce, you know who your true friends are when you can make it through a divorce. You know who your true friends are. And I lost a lot of friends. Rightfully so. I mean, I get it. I understand the dynamic of divorce. I understand losing friends and losing connections and things like that. But the real ones will stay. And so my best friend stayed. Even when his wife was like, yo, no, we not rocking with Tim. No, not at all. We're going to go on this side with the ex-wife. And he was like, nah, we not leaving my man like this. We not leaving him. Because I apparently he told me that he just always saw the potential in me. And he just knew that if I could just clean myself up, or just God could just clean me up. He's like, man, you could just be a powerhouse in so many ways and impact people. But most importantly, you could just leave just a different legacy for you and your kids. And so when he stayed, that meant a lot to me. And so what it encouraged me to do, because he stayed so well, he actually was the officiant at my wedding last year. And so my best friend, just amazing guy, definitely looked out. And what that did in that season for me encouraged me to start developing relationships with other men, developing that brotherhood and that bond with other men, showing my vulnerable space, I guess, or who I truly am. I'm just being me. And I think because of that, it's allowed me to come out of my own comfort zone from not really trusting men before. Now I got a solid team of guys that I trust that I will rock with. And I think my encouragement to other men is just don't be afraid that every man is out for themselves. Don't assume that we all into this power struggle with each other. You really have men out there that are uplifting, who truly want to do life with somebody, because we already feel like we can't communicate or can't talk about what we're really feeling. We don't have a space with our wife because she just going to automatically take what I say and run with it. Some men may think. And then you have some other men who just withdraw from it, just keep it to themselves. And I feel like if we can just be a community of men who just put it out there like, yeah, man, I struggle with pornography, or I struggle with the fact that, alcoholism, or I struggle with, drugs, or whatever the case is. It could be whatever it is, but we all got to be accepting to each other. And I've always been a guy like that. And I think we just got to create a safe space amongst us Black men specifically that I'm very passionate about.
I love that. Love that. And it's such a valid point, man. Like you said, I'm not even as an adult, I don't really have, a very select few brothers that I feel comfortable, just laying it all out there, being completely transparent and vulnerable with. And that can be a lonely place sometimes, because like going through your stuff, man, it's really hard because, like you said, whether it's the shame, whether it's the embarrassment, whether it's the, just the overall struggle as a whole, to just be straight up like that and feel like you got a community of brothers that you can pour into, lay it all out on the line, what's going on with you, without, feeling like you're getting ready to be judged, laughed at, or made a joke of, or mockery of. That's a hard space to not that's a hard place to be in, to not have that safe space. So it's definitely critical to have that. And I would encourage, as I know that you are doing the same, any brother who doesn't have, that community, to do what you can to get connected. There's so many different ways for us to do that. And like I said, even with myself, it's still a work in progress of wanting to expand that circle even more of brothers that you can rely upon. Because, everybody is real good with being on board with you and down with you when life is great and smooth and flowing. But when I'm in my darkest, deep, loneliest moments of distress, I need to know, is there some brotherhood around me that I can reach out to, that they basically my ride or die. They with me to the end. So to hear you have a friend, that even in the midst of what you went through, that he was still there for you. Not so much that he was saying you did the right thing or anything, but he didn't give up on you. He was just still, I'm your, I understand you fell short, because at the end of the day, your sin may not be my sin may not be your sin, but we're not without sin. Just like I fall short in my moment, you can have your moment of falling short too, and you're going to want somebody to be there for you. And, again, not to, any wrongdoing, but to just be there to support me and help me bounce back, snap back, and work through that. God
Catch
places
me when
people
I
like that in our
fall.
lives. Yeah.
Catch me when I fall. That's when you stumble, you don't want to land hard. I mean, even though you may deserve it, no question about it, but you still you still want to feel grace even if you mess up. And
Right.
they extended grace. That my family, my best friend and his wife, they extended nothing but grace to me and walked the journey with me to be restored and a changed man. And I wanted to reward their faith by always being a man of integrity, a man who follows after God's own heart. And that's really it. So I got nothing but love for people that stick around, because it's a great life.
Absolutely, man. That's good stuff right there. So, and we've kind of delved into this next question, if you will. But if you had a chance to sit the younger Tim across from you, man, knowing what you've been through, whether it's a divorce, whether it's the abandonment that you felt as a kid, the absence of that relationship that you wish you had, with men out there that are going to have an opportunity to check this episode out, and they are where you were, feeling what you were feeling, going through what you're going through, that you went through at that point in time, what would be your words of encouragement to them, to let them know that in spite of that disconnected relationship with your dad, in spite of maybe having a marriage that didn't work out, or just some other challenges that you're going through where you feeling like you just out here by yourself, no identity, no sense of purpose or whatever, what would be those words of encouragement that you would say to these brothers, or even the side that might be going through that same kind of situation on their end? What would you say to them that you feel would be empowering and encouraging to give them a different positive perspective in spite of those circumstances? This is what you need to focus on and lock in on to come up out of this situation that you're in.
I would say to every man, excuse me, I'm sorry. When it comes to understanding who you are, you have to understand that you have emotions. Simple as that. Now, you need to understand as a man, we have primarily 8 emotional needs. Okay. So I'm going to break them down real quick. And I think that these are things that will be helpful to understand what are some tips and tools. Understand who you are so that you're able to accurately communicate what your needs are going to be. Okay. Affirmation. You need affirmation from somebody. Somebody being able to just tell you who you are, giving you a word of encouragement, rather it be, you look great today. You're going to do great on your job today, or I'm rooting for you. You need some kind of affirmation as a man, right? You need respect. We need to always feel respected with the people that we communicate with, right? Understanding. So I think we get a lot of tripped up with this, with being heard and understood. Sometimes we will understand a person only to respond as opposed to comprehend. And that's what we lack in communication at times. Right? So we also need like our own personal space to be able to kind of dive into our own thoughts, which is something that we as men, we struggle with. We struggle with just being able to sit down, and we're so performance based and performance driven. So we always got to be on the go doing stuff anyway, trying to make the next dollar, trying to get the next house, trying to, take the woman out on the next meal, trying to do so much for the kids, money going in and out left and right. And we just got to keep performing, keep performing. But we need personal space, man. We need personal space as well. We need to be pampered at times. So if it's any ladies who are married to the husbands out here, please pamper that man by rubbing his feet tonight. Hey, I don't care if they Myra's feet or not. You need a rubber. We need to feel these things, man. It's a spin off of probably what you probably was thinking, like, but we gotta start here in the mental part, because we already know mental health is already one of the leading causes of death and suicide amongst Black women, but more specifically Black men. We are just not taking care of ourselves. And so we need some type of recreation too, man. We got to feel like a king, but we got to feel like a kid too, man. We got to be able to kind of like, what gets rewarded gets repeated too. You ever hear that? Like, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So like, if we're getting these things to be able to take care of our mental space, we could be able to show up in a different way. And it's a cumulative effect all around the family as showing up different. Get you some friends, B. As I always say, you gotta have at least one person who is willing to kind of ride with you, even through life's ups and downs. And I would say, get you someone that you can just truly be transparent and honest with. There's no shame in the game. As Joseph, you said earlier, we all are human. We all make mistakes. And so just acknowledging them and having someone walk you through the process of turning away from, maybe you may have like a poisonous thought. We all have them, right? But I need somebody that's going to be the anti-venom to my poisonous thoughts. So I'm like, I need somebody right there to kind of tell me, hey,
Right.
Don't
do that.
I know what you like, and I know you like that right there. Go home. And I'll be like, shoot, I'm going home. But I have that in place. And I would say, fellas, you got to get somebody that can be like, yo, nah, man, you got too much to lose. And I understand how you react when you come home late. Just let you find that out. You going 6 feet under. And so you got to have guys like that. And you got to be able to have time to process your own thoughts, man. So, rushing leads to like a reaction, but really time always leads to a better response. So I just thought of just those things that would be helpful for as we are trying to navigate a different, when you are going through the life challenges, think about how you feel, process those things, but also being able to get therapy. Please seek therapy. Like that's something huge, man. We gotta be able to kind of talk through things because our perspective on things is not always what it should be, or it's not realistic to the outside world. We got to be able to have people counteract our own thoughts because we got so many thoughts, millions of thoughts going in our mind a day. So we got to get our thoughts challenged and things like that. So that's really what I would say, man.
I love that, man. I love that breakdown, especially the part when you talked about, and it would apply to men and women. You need that brother that knows you so well that when he sees you going down the path of, destruction, speak, that he's not encouraging that, he's like, nah, bro, I know you. Come on, let's go this way. Let's go
Yeah.
that direction, you know. And even on the flip side of that, that person, because I got a couple of, brothers and even a couple of sisters that if I'm not, how should I say, if I'm not placing enough value in myself and my work and what I'm supposed to do, like one sister in particular that I'm a childhood friend of mine, respect to my podcast, she's heard me on a number of occasions, oh, this was my little small podcast, whatever. She's like, stop that. What you're doing is different. This is special. This is unique. You need to speak like that. Not all this. Don't be trying to water it down. Don't try to downplay it. And so even sometimes you got to have somebody to check you in a positive way where you downplaying what your worth or your value is or what you're doing like small. But no, don't play something that's big like it's small. So we need those kind of people, those supporters, those encouragers, those empowerers, those people, like you said, that you can be vulnerable with, and they'll keep it real with you, not in a judgy way, but in a loving way. Back, I want nothing but the best for you. So I'm gonna tell you when you out of pocket, but I'm also gonna tell you when you spot on, and I wanna push you further to keep going with that, keep riding with that. So, all of those things that you mentioned, man, are valuable. Not only is, but even for sisters who might have an opportunity to check this out, you can across that, make those same points across the board on your end. We need that. We need to be tapped into mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It's a full circle of it all, in order for us to be the best versions of ourselves. So really appreciate you, man. So, Tim, man, it's been awesome having you aboard this evening, man, sharing your journey, the authentic, transparent way you did it, man. You dropped some gems and some nuggets tonight, man. I know I've been blessed. I know our listeners are going to be blessed by your story. But, before I let you go, as is custom, Blessings in the Streets podcast, man, we want to have an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you, my brother. So if you got anything that's going on right now, coming up, whatever that is, business, personal, whatever, that we can celebrate, acknowledge, please do share with us at this time. What you got going on? What's coming up down the pike for Tim? Do we need to know about?
Well, I have a couple of things that I am currently working on. So currently, I am the co-host of the Back Pew Conversations with Tim and Tam. Me being Tim, and then I also have my wonderful co-host Tam Watts. She is a Dallas native. She lives in Houston, Texas now, but we put on a podcast every Tuesday night on Facebook Live and YouTube Live as well. And we just talk pop culture, we talk Christian, we talk R&B, we talk sports, we talk everything. But it elevates the culture in a way to where we could just have honest conversation from a Christian perspective. Both of us are Christians. Tam, she has an amazing resilience about her. She has been 2.5 years abstinent. So you just understand her value and character, and me being associated, being a man of God, I just enjoy that project as well. So we've had over 100 and I believe 30,000 views over the past month or so on YouTube. So it's been really moving, and we're grateful for that, and grateful that, God will open up doors for more people to just see and watch and just enjoy that. From a business aspect, I am working on a Workday training program. I am a senior global Workday analyst slash consultant. And so I've been doing that for 11 years now. And my desire is to move that into a different space and start to educate people and elevate the culture in a way that is coming up soon. So won't give too many details, but it is going to be something that will elevate the culture in a way that will make people very proud. It'll make myself proud. It'll make my family proud. And I really thrive on those things as a Black man, trying to really give back to our people. And so I'm looking forward to what's to come. So thank you for having me on your amazing platform tonight, Joseph. It has been great just talking blessings in the street, talking about just my overall story, but also connecting, your experiences as well. You're an amazing host, man. And I really pray for your platform to go very far, man. And I know it will, because it's in great hands.
I appreciate that, man. Love the words of encouragement. Love what you're doing. So, I mean, I'm lifting you up in prayer, your podcast, your upcoming project that you got working on. Just as you said, elevating the culture, impacting change, making a difference, allowing your gifts that God has put into you to be used in a magnificent, mighty way, man. So much love to you in that regard, to your family, man. Just everything that you touch. We just claiming that victory right now, that the victories is already lined up, man. We celebrating the beginning because we already know what the ending looks like. It's just, it ain't here yet, but it's coming,
It's coming.
and so, it's coming. And when it comes, y'all better be ready. Connect with my brother, check out his podcast, keep in touch with him, follow him, see what he got going on. If you can be in any way, whether it's a supportive way, contributing way, any way, to lift him up, even if it's just in prayer, behind the scenes, I'm sure you all of that, so. And again, if you've enjoyed our content for this evening on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, please subscribe, please share, please comment, please like, because this is what it's all about. We just taking time out to share our stories, to empower, to encourage, to uplift, to inspire, hoping that in doing so, you will be blessed, find a different approach, a different way of handling those challenging moments in life, not trying to do it all by yourself, but understanding that we got to have God at the head to guide us through. And if you haven't gotten a relationship with God, I promise you, it'll be the best decision that you'll ever make. I encourage you to make that decision today, because you will not regret it. It'll make life so much easier for you. Not that you won't ever go through storms anymore or anything like that, but be reminded of the fact that you don't have to do it by yourself. That makes all the difference in the world. As far as I know, and I know Tim knows this as well, he is problem, no situation, no circumstance too big for him to handle. So you walking around carrying that weight and that burden and that pressure, you don't have to do that. Just let him lead you through that. Let you guide the way, let him guide your way through those challenging moments and times. And again, I promise you, God, okay. And he's going to show you what your purpose is if you don't already know. And you'll too be able to do some great and magnificent and wonderful things and live a life in abundance. And I'm not just speaking financially. I'm talking about in joy and in peace and in love from friends and family, and to pour out to the world in a mighty way. So with that said, remember that here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in with us this evening. And until then, when we get together, I want you to keep fighting that good fight, keep persevering, keep pushing through those challenge times, not letting those moments defeat you. You still a human. You still have a right to experience your emotions, but don't stay stuck in those moments. There's a God that is willing and able and ready and willing to work it through with you, to be there for you unconditionally, showing you all the love, all the grace, all the mercy that he has for you. So you don't have to do this journey alone. There's people out there for you that he's placed in this world to be in your presence, but he is at the head, and let him do his thing. Let him be God by himself, because he has all the answers and the perfect way, perfect timing in doing it all. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. Appreciate you joining in, and I'll see you then.